Labour MPs, unsurprisingly, voted down that Tory demand backed by reform for a new national inquiry into the appalling behaviour of those rape gangs, which went unchecked for years.
That's right. The Commons opposed a call by Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch for a fresh probe into historical child sexual exploitation by 364 votes to 111.
The ayes to the right were 111, the noes to the left 364. So the noes have it, the noes have it. Unlock.
So before the vote, the Prime Minister had this to say during Prime Minister's questions.
What I find shocking is that anyone in this House would vote down the Children's Wellbeing Bill this afternoon, which is vital protections for the most vulnerable in our society. And I urge the Leader of the Opposition to withdraw her wrecking amendment.
Well, honestly. Let's get the latest from our political editor, Chris Hope. Chris, my take on that wretched bill he's talking about is an attempt to wreck academies, which have been a great success, particularly in England, where we've actually seen education achievement rising because academies can choose their own curriculum, their own class sizes, their own salaries, and Labour want to reverse all of that. But to the vote itself, no surprise. But where was the Prime Minister? Did he even bother to vote?
Yeah, it's a good question, Andrew. I mean, the point there is that the reason why that the Tories had to put forward this, what would be a wrecking amendment had it gone through to the Children's and Schools Wellbeing Bill, is because the government is not doing a national inquiry, and that's one of the most bluntest instruments that the Tories have got. I'm struck by what might happen next now after that defeat last night. For Kemi Badenoch, has she yet met members of the victims groups? She's met no victims as of yesterday. Keir Starmer met them yesterday. She's been criticised for getting on the bandwagon on this issue. On Keir Starmer, I think language is softening against having a public inquiry. He said in the House yesterday there's no fixed view amongst victims. And also Number 10 told us they're open, of course, and will listen to what victims want. So if victims keep calling for an inquiry, that'll get harder to resist. And for Reform UK, I know you've got Richard Tice on shortly. I think it might be worth asking him, will Elon Musk fund this independent inquiry which Nigel Farage is putting together? He says he's going to find a retired judge to run it, but it will need resources. And I can imagine Elon Musk, given his interest in the grooming gang scandal, the way he's propelled that to the top of the agenda here in Westminster. I wonder if he can find some loose change to pay for it.
All right, that's Chris Hope talking to him. We've got Richard Tice in the studio with us. Before we ask you about that, Richard, the government's defence for not having another inquiry is because we had the J inquiry. I took the actual trouble to read it, actually, in the last couple of days. Do you know how many times it mentions Rotherham? Once, and that was, I think, in respect of Cyril Smith.
That's Rochdale.
That's Rochdale.
Sorry, that's
Cyril
Rochdale.
Smith.
But
Rotherham
no, he
once,
mentioned
and
Rotherham once.
Not at all.
So I spoke in the House yesterday about this. I obviously voted to have the inquiry, and I think there is a huge cover-up going on. There are many Labour MPs in the House of Commons who were previous leaders of Labour councils who have got a lot to hide, and that, I think, is one of the primary reasons. And we've got to have this inquiry. I think that they've missed the mood of the nation, and I think it's a 50-50 that they will have to change their mind. If not, we are deadly serious about holding our own independent inquiry.
That is a very strong allegation that MPs have a lot to hide. What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is that the Labour Party is saying, well, local towns, local councils have got the opportunity to hold their own inquiries. Well, the Leader of the Opposition read out a list of many towns where there haven't been inquiries, where everybody knows very bad stuff has happened. And what I said in the House is victims and survivors, yes, they want action now, but in parallel, people also want answers in other towns. And you can do those two things in parallel. You could have a one-year rapid inquiry specifically into these child rape gangs, which we've not yet had. And whilst they suggest, well, part of the J inquiry, there was a 2-year element, I've read that as well. it barely touches the sides.
It's very generalised.
What's the alternative? Am I right in thinking that Reform might like to do their own inquiry?
So we've said that if the government won't lead an inquiry, which obviously has statutory powers, then we will organise our own independent inquiry run by independent experts and possibly retired judges, because I think people want answers on this. Now, that wouldn't have the same statutory basis,
'cause you couldn't
but
compel
nevertheless,
witnesses to come.
frankly, if we call people to appear and they say we're not going to appear, well, that tells you a story.
Well,
why not?
Now, Richard, and you know, even a year-long inquiry is hugely expensive.
Correct, and we're very confident that we would be able to fund it. Look, it's very early days.
Well, would Elon Musk write a cheque?
I've no idea, frankly, but he's interested in this topic, as are, perhaps more importantly, tens of millions of British citizens. I think we'll have no problem funding an inquiry. It doesn't need to be anything like as expensive, all these government inquiries, but people want answers, and they want to know that you've got action happening. Support the government on that, but in parallel, let's have a proper investigation into some of these other towns. And it's not good enough to say local councils are going to do it, because some of those councils, as I said in the House, they've got bodies buried. They've got things to hide. You can't mark your own homework.
They connived in the cover-up.
Exactly.
It's hard to know where to start with you at the moment, because Reform pack such a punch from a press point of view, literally across the world for the last few weeks. But the one thing we do want to talk about is the latest incident in relation to the personnel at Reform, which was the loss of Howard Cox, very popular with a lot of our viewers. Let's have a little look at what he said on Twitter last night.
Hello, I've decided to actually leave the Reform UK party. There are a number of reasons why I'm doing this, which will come out in the coming months. But the most important thing, by leaving the party, frees me up to talk about a number of political issues without criticism.
Howard was your London mayoral candidate. It's worth reminding ourselves. What's happened?
Howard is a very good friend. He's worked incredibly hard. As a mayoral candidate, he stood down in Dover. And I'm very sad that he feels that way. But at the end of the day, democracy is about people, free speech. It's about people having different ideas, different views. And if he's got a particular issue that he wants to talk about, which is not our policy, he's made that choice. Well, fully respect that, to leave and do that. I'm sad because Howard's worked very hard.
Preempt him and tell us what the problem is.
I genuinely don't know.
Robinson?
It might be Tommy Robinson. It might be other issues. I genuinely don't know. But look, I'm very grateful to Howard for all the efforts that he's put in. He has worked very hard, along with many, many others.
You've also lost Ben Habib, who effectively, he was deputy leader. You and I think you've been in the studio together with him. He was a distinguished supporter. He's gone too. What's going wrong?
Well, I think the reality is we're growing fast. We've got 170,000 members. We're going up in the polls. But everybody knows that at the end of the day, you can be a broad church. People can have different views. Ben's got specific views about, us organising the Constitution. We've already voted on that, and that's happening. At the end of the day, I respect people's willingness and wish to speak out if they want on particular issues. That's the whole point of free speech. But at the end of the day, we've got a clear agenda. And as you've just quite rightly said, we are making the news because whether it's on the grooming gangs or whether it's on the economy, we actually are in touch with what's going on. I've been, calling out the concerns about the debt markets. And sadly, the debt markets are really, really anxious. Rachel Reeves, as Chancellor, has crashed the economy with her blunder budget. There's an urgent question at about 10:30 today in the House.
Who's tabled that?
That's been tabled by the Shadow Chancellor.
I don't know why Rachel Reeves. Why the Tory leader didn't raise it yesterday at Brimes's questions. Look at the front page of the Telegraph.
It was obvious. I've been talking about it for weeks.
Same on the front of the Daily Mail.
So look, she's missed that opportunity. There is serious turmoil. Specialist experts, some of the best people in the financial markets that I've been in touch with in the last 48 hours are really, really concerned. And the impact on ordinary folk, on your viewers and listeners, is that the cost of mortgages is going to go up in the coming weeks and months. This is because government borrowing, how they borrow to pay the huge debt, which is at what, 2.7 Correct. It's the cost of government borrowing is going up, and therefore
sky high,
and therefore all of the other interest rates go up. But the reason for that is because of the budget, where the government decided, Rachel Reeves decided, to spend 60-70 billion pounds and raise taxes by some 40-odd billions of pounds. And so companies are stopping investing, they're laying people off. and people are stopping spending. And we are in a real dangerous moment.
Are we in a Liz Truss moment?
Oh, way worse. Way worse. I mean, experts in the city are saying that the concerns are dire and the mood is way darker than at the peak concerns at the Liz Truss time.
Because there was a run on the pound, and the pound is now
falling. The cost of debt is rising, and mortgages, sadly, the cost of mortgages will go up.
Explain why the cost of debt rising, Richard, matters to people watching the programme and listening now. Why does that matter? Because it's government debt, but why does it matter to them?
Because then the banks will have to increase the cost of their mortgages to people.
Right.
And so that impacts, obviously, on everybody's ability to pay that mortgage. When you're looking at moving house, what's the mortgage cost, the weekly, monthly cost of that? And that's why already we're seeing house price indices, I believe, fell in December. And, there's genuine, real concerns.
Also, on a state level, that means that Rachel Reeves will have a choice to either stop spending so much, which she doesn't want to do, or tax us more.
And that is a vicious spiral that she has created herself with her government. And we know how to get out of it. There are serious things you've got to do.
Right, tell us.
So you've got to scrap net zero. That'll save you 30 billion a year. You've got to stop paying voluntary interest on all the money printing from the Bank of England. That's another 30 billion a year. And I said you've got to save £5 in 100 by reducing the wasteful, fraudulent, corrupt spending all over the public sector. The government attacked me last year and said you couldn't do it. Guess what? What's the government do? Just before Christmas, they wrote to everybody to say you've got to save £5 in 100. In other words, they admitted Tice is right.
You've been an MP for about 6 months now, Richard. What's your takeout now that you're in this seat? Because you look a bit like a coiled spring, if you don't mind, if that's not too uncomplimentary, which is that you look like you're desperate to get into government and sort some of this stuff out. What have you learnt in the last 6 months?
What I've learnt is that the incompetence and the waste of spending of public money. When I said save £5 at 100, people said it couldn't be done. Do you know what? I think I was being cautious. Frankly, I think you've got to be more ambitious. We're going to have to be more ambitious. We're going to have to save £7, £8, £10 at 100 of government spending. But I don't think it'd be that difficult. There is so much waste everywhere. So yes, do you know what? I am frustrated because this great country of ours, we've got so much potential, but we are heading badly in the wrong direction. We're heading south, and it could get quite bumpy. It could get very uncomfortable. People are looking across the pond and they're saying, the American economy is growing. Why? Cheap energy. Why? Drill, baby, drill. We've got hundreds of billions of energy treasure under our feet that we're not using. And they're closing it down.
Right,
we should be doing the opposite.
Well, good to see you. I'll let you bounce out of the studio like a coiled spring.